We are live.
All right. So, Carol and I are going to try and do something a little bit different. We're going to start a series on reviewing each card based on their kind. So we're going to start with set 1, Faith Animo. And to start off, we're going to start with the Animo that we think are not necessarily the most useful, moving on to the most useful in set 2. So here we're going to start off with Cutie. Oh yeah, in set 1. So in set 1 we have a Cutie Pillar who is a Faith Animo, has 2 virtue points, is a level 1, and is free. And quite frankly, anything that is free in this game is usually pretty good.
I personally used these in my Series 1 deck just because of the fact that they were free, and I had a lot of trouble getting power in Series 1. And so he was the only Faith that I actually ran.
Now, Cutie Pillar grows into Metacoon. Metacoon has 5 virtue power, is a level 2 that grows from Cutie Pillar, costs 1 Faith and 1 colorless. For if this was a level 1 Animo, this would be extremely fair point value to 2. Because 5 to 2 ratio is a pretty good curve. But because it grows, this is actually pretty bad, in my opinion.
Series 1, I hated growth stages just due to the fact it took forever to try and find them. And also, I never ran Faith that much, and so I just never had any sort of use for this card.
All right. Moving on, we have Glorify, starting our trifecta of the flies, which you will see in our other reviews. So Glorify is a 10-point value. It is a level 3. It costs 2 Faith specific to activate, which a 2 for 10 is actually pretty good. The only problem that we have really is that its other 2 stages aren't really that great. And it's a 2 for 10, and there's another level 3 in set 1 that is a level 3 for a 10 for 1 activation cost. So, in my opinion, it's not really great to use Glorify, but Glorify is pretty cute. I do like the artwork on it, so at least it has that going for it.
Again, never really used growth stages that much, and never really ran Faith, so yeah, it's cute, but it was never useful for me.
Yep. Also, its name is a great pun. So, this is Moncanic B. Moncanic B, I believe the B stands for the fact that it's blue. It has 7 virtue points for 3.
I forgot about that.
It's 3 specific. Due to the fact that it's 3, its cost is 3 specific, and it's 7 for 3. Being level 1, it's not really great. I actually specifically ran this one because one of the premier Cinnies of set 1 was Omo. And so
I like to abuse Omo.
Yes. So I would practice this Bible verse from Romans 8:28, which is actually a Bible verse that Carolyn and I really have dear to our heart, just so I could defeat Omo.
But now, the funny thing is it's a different translation. And so one of the things that Nathaniel and I would do is we wanted to make it translation specific, especially if like we were going to be working with kids or something like that. So if we're playing with a child or, someone that we don't normally play with or something, if they used a different translation or something, we counted that. But for him and I to make things a little bit more competitive, it had to be exact, to what was actually on the card. And it was always really funny because he would hand me the card and then he would just freeze.
Right. So out of probably the hundreds of times that we played, I've only ever gotten this thing done right once. And that was because she was lenient on me. But usually if we miss one word, it's a no-go.
Yeah.
All right.
Again, never used Faith that much, and I was never a big fan of the Moncanic. Again, I was never a really big fan of the growths, and so I I don't think I ever ran Mechanic at all.
No.
Any of them.
You didn't.
But I do like that it's an Optimist Primate, and that just makes me giggle. But I do tend to abuse Omo, and would I have been able to run more than one copy of Asini, I probably would have run multiple copies of Omo.
All right, True Blue. So True Blue provides 4 virtue points. It's a level 1. It costs 1 specific faith, and 2 universal, but it has an extra effect, which says you can search your deck for any 1 virtuous Animo, which is a really great effect. And quite frankly, for 3 power, that's actually a pretty good effect to have for 3 power. I have 2 gripes about this. The power that it provides isn't really that great. It's only a 4. It does cost 3 power, and early game is usually when you're searching for cards. Yes, you do search for cards throughout the entire game, but when you really are looking for like that virtuous Animo to get you power cards, the 3 cost is kind of hefty. So I personally wouldn't use True Blue for that. So I actually chose not to run True Blue. True Blue does defeat Tag Along, but Tag Along is only a 4, so you can see that we wouldn't really actually worry about anyone running Tag Along because Tag Along just had such a low power value.
Right.
So we chose just not to really run True Blue, and we chose not to run Tag Along, and that wasn't a problem.
I felt like there were just better Cinis out there that had more of a cost than this one that we had easy access to, you know. And True Blue, again, never really ran Faith. And for 3 power for only 4, I just felt it was a little bit obsolete compared to some of the other cards that we would run.
And then, fun fact, True Blue happens to also work for the set 2 Detestable. So there is a set 2 True Blue, and
way better in my opinion.
Way better. We actually would splash that into any deck that we can fit him into at this point.
And abuse greatly.
And that True Blue happens to actually be able to beat this Detestable.
So yeah, this is the only set 2 Cine that we have that works with a Series 1 Faith.
Yep.
Yeah, hold that out there.
This is set 1 Stagnetic. Oh, how power creep has just like empowered you in set 2. So has virtue point for 9. It's a level 1 for 3, and a 9 for 3 fair value. Stagnetic also happens to be the weakness of Batapole. And so, and like you can compare their defense the power or the virtuous points and the defense power that Batapole has, and you can see that like this Bible verse isn't that difficult. It's James 4:7. Submit yourselves then to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. It's a Bible verse that like Carol and I really know by heart. And
you also every time screwed that one up too.
True. But you also chose not to use Batapole as your 9 defense. You chose to use Vix.
That is true.
So, Stagnetic, it's good value. Good set 1 card. But just right now, set 2 Stagnetic's just so much better.
And also, personally, I really like the graphics for the set 2 Stagnetic. And I like but I do like the background on this one better, to be honest. So that was my thing. But again, I never ran Faith, so Stagnetic was useless for me.
All right. Hoof It. So Hoof It is an 8 power. It's a level 1, or 8 points level 1, and it has a cost of 1 specific and 2 universal. So for a total of 3 for 8, that's actually very fair for set 1. I mean, that's fair for set 2, even like look at Servitude.
Yep.
But it has an extra effect where you get to shuffle 1 card in your discard pile back into your deck. Set 1 had these kind of one-off effects where you could shuffle cards back into your deck, which primarily is like a Faith kind of theme.
Yeah.
So you could see this. You can also see that Hoof It, the artwork on Hoof It, is like the background is like very fierce and intense. It's like a kind of like a unicorn with its like a horn like twisting and turning like that. It also has a similar kind of the character itself of Hoof It looks similar to the Hightail artwork. And Hoof It, I actually ran Hoof It because Hurricane was another premier city that we both ran. So I can memorize this Bible verse from Psalms 119:11. And I've hidden your word in my heart that I might not sin against you. And that verse is actually something that like I grew up with, like in my uncle's Baptist church that we had to quote every vacation Bible school. And like Hoof It being or Hurricane being as fierce and as prominent as he was, I ran one copy of Hoof It just in case I ran into him.
Hurricane was great. I absolutely love Hurricane. I still run him in set 2 just because I like his ability. I like the artwork. I like everything about Hurricane. So never really ran Hoof It, but I do like the artwork on Hoof It.
And Hoof It also was able to defeat Vix.
That is also another reason you ran that one.
Yes, because Hoof It was able to defeat 2 different cities that Carolyn ran.
Yup.
Now, this is my boy, Crokin. So I happen to really like frogs.
No, you like toads.
Toads, frogs. Like, in one card game I ran frogs, another card game I ran toads. And toads are frogs, but not all frogs are toads. I get it.
You had a toad.
I did have a toad. His name was Nicodemus. Sir Nicodemus Esquire. So anyways.
You never told me that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Learn something new. I'll give you a moment to calm down. So, Crokin has 4 virtue points, is a level 1, and requires 2 faith. With cards like Rosa and Gratifly, Vineon, and Chipper, 4 for 2 is actually kind of bad. But Crokin actually grows into Todokin. And he looks more like a chicken than a toad. I guess he is a chicken. Now,
he's a chicken toad.
Because he has a growth on him, being this value is all right. I personally like to see more, but because it is a growth stage, keeping it at below a 4 does make it fair compared to all the other growth stages. You grow him into Todokin, who is a 9, a level 2, for 1 faith specific and 1 universal specific, which a 9 for 2 is actually pretty good value, especially compared to like Stagnetic, who was a 3 for 1, or sorry, a 3 for 9. So Todokin, I used him very shortly. I found that I wasn't seeing him enough, and I wanted to focus on other growth stages in my deck, so I ended up taking him out.
The only thing I have to say about Crokin and Todokin is I like how he looks like a pirate and he's a lifeguard. Like, I'm not sure how that worked in his, evolution there, but it just, yeah.
Okay.
I personally, again, growth stages aren't really my thing until obviously now Series 2. They're absolutely my thing. But I would not use this one. I would actually use this next growth stage instead.
This is Woolsey. Woozy, our sheep, little innocent lamb. For 3 virtue points, a level 1, 1 faith. This was pretty standard. 3 for 1 is the decent value for an Animo that does grow in set 1. And just in set 1, because set 2 they do this a little bit too, like with the harmonies. But the harmonies like explode.
Right.
So. All right, and Woolsey grows into one of Carolyn's favorite, Flow.
So there was a time when I was running a little bit of faith right at the very beginning, just as seeing if I liked it, seeing what I liked more. And that was kind of how I ended up with my hope and my love. But for faith, this was the growth stage that I used. And Woolsey, yeah, again, that 1 for 3, very fair. But the 1 universal for 8, just to me, absolutely beats just about any of the other growth stages, because it's only 2. Because I always had issues trying to get to that 3rd growth stage, even in Hope and Love, which is why I usually wouldn't run a growth stage that had up to 3. But again, I preferred the Woolsey and Flow over something like this because, again, 1 for 8 is better than 2 for 9 to me.
Now, the other cool thing is that Woolsey defeats Conformander. Conformander is a great pun, by the way, and has this thing about kind of like just conforming to the world around you. But Woolsey, its Bible verse says, following him, the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. And it's Psalms 23:1. This is a Bible verse that I would get wrong every single time because
You learned it in KJV.
I learned it in KJV translation. So, but Conformander is definitely not a threat with Woolsey around, and Woolsey's pretty easy to get to because it's a level 1. Now, compare that to Anxiator. Oh my goodness. This is my boy Anxiator. I ran him because he was a 12, just a big cinny. Now...
You usually ran him and the mecha, right?
No, I ran Mega Globster.
That's right.
Yes. Flo defeats Anxiator, and that's because Flo's virtue is trusting him. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. And this Bible verse is one that I memorized, but of course I always get this wrong because it is a different translation. And so Carolyn would call me out on it. As a result, I ended up dropping Flo from my deck. But now in set 2, Carolyn has found a new value in Flo. And is in a very aggressive, very point-centered deck. And so if I
have
ever...
a thing for the underdog, okay?
Yes. And so if I ever chose to run Anxiator again, just because it's a big 12, Carolyn's Flo is
good.
Just... Yes, she's good.
I got this.
Now we're getting to more towards the cards that I actually chose to run in set 1. First off, Null. Remember when
you abused Null?
I did. Null was one of those cards that was very imbalanced. In my opinion, it could be considered very fair value because it is 3 points for a level 1 that gets that costs 2 faith. But it has an extra effect which says search your deck for any one card. So the one card that I would usually get with this is usually Lumini, or one of my growth stages, or basically anything that I needed. But it was a 2 cost, and I only got 3 virtue points for it. But in set 1, you didn't really have to go big to win all the time. You just had to go small, get what you needed, and then go big the next turn.
Beat them by attrition.
Exactly.
Yeah. Again, I never really used Null due to the 2 for 3. But it was really good, and I always saw how Nathaniel would abuse the card, and if he could have run more than 3, he would have.
Right. Also, Null is a card that I do recommend in set 2. I just currently don't run it because I have other more value cards.
Like Triblu.
Set 2 Triblu is great. So this is Lumini. Lumini's my boy. As a matter of fact, currently, Carolyn and I have agreed that in my new Faith deck, I have to take my Luminis out and run Nebe instead because that's far more fair.
Yes.
So, what Lumini is a 12, level 1 for 4 power. 2 faith specific and 2 universal. Which, that's just fair value. A 12 for 4, if you even look at now, Draylight for 13 is 4. Yeah. But the reason why we run Lumini isn't because we ever really plan to activate him and get points from him. But we do sometimes.
Rarely.
We use him for his offering ability. So rather than having an extra effect, which are actions, this is offering, which is an ability. So at any time, you can actually discard this card. And you can search your deck for 1 faith power card add to your power pool. Now, the really neat thing about this is that this does not count towards your once per turn power card from your hand into your power pool. So I would basically try and get as many of these as early as I can in set 1, so that way I can advance and accelerate my power cards, so that way I had enough to activate my Animos and gain virtue points from them. Another thing that I will note that is in set 1, you could actually use Null to activate Null as an action to go grab Lumini. Then, during your action phase, since it's set at any time, you would discard Lumini to go advance your power into your power pool in the same score phase. So if you didn't have enough power to send out all your Animo, you potentially could.
Right.
Now, in set 2, the way that this works is that abilities can only be used during the setup phase. So, Carolyn and I agreed that discarding the Animo, we would have to discard it from our small group, just so it's fair. Because otherwise, we just discard it from our hand. We just go grab it, put it in our hand with someone like Gut Piece.
Yep.
And just, oh my goodness, that should be so ridiculous. Why don't I run Gut Piece?
Because you don't like guppies.
And then what we do is we just go ahead and we make certain that he's in the small group first, then activate his ability, discard him. But then also that makes him a good combination with True Blue in set 2. So we'll use True Blue to discard Lumini, or you discard Lumini to grab a Faith, play True Blue from our hand, use True Blue's effect to exchange True Blue and Lumini from the discard pile, then use Lumini's effect again to gain another Faith.
Right.
Carolyn does something...
Which is why I nerfed that for
right.
our stuff.
Right, because Faith having access to True Blue like that and just being able to shake and break and Paul's chains 2 Lumini's out.
It's rude.
It's just way too fast, way too powerful. You guys can take hints and like pick up this and try this in your own home. But just for me to run my Faith deck to make it more fair and balanced, I don't use Lumini in my games against Carolyn unless we purposefully plan it.
Right. And I actually, because I didn't really run Faith, I would run the love counterpart to Lumini, which was Opalus, which has the same offering, it has the same cost, except for the 2 specific would be love, obviously.
Okay. This is my boy Gorilla Escape. We go way back.
You also abused him.
Yes.
Him and Noel.
Yep. So, Gorilla Escape. I ran 3 of this. I ran 3 of Noel. I ran 3 of the Luminis. Gorilla Escape has 7 virtue points. It's a level 1. It has 2 specified faith and 1 universal. So for 3 power, for 3 power, I can gain 7 points. That's fair value. The thing that makes this not really fair is the fact that you can search your deck or discard pile for any 1 Animo. Now, since it says Animo and it doesn't specify virtuous Animo, if you discard a Cine that you will need next turn, you can go grab that. Or you can just go search your deck for your growth stages, your Luminis. I would go grab Armorino Ultra with this. Very strong. Carolyn did not really like me using Gorilla Escape, and he was actually the only one I was able to consistently quote the Bible verse for with Clench, but it took me quite a long time to actually get there. Clench.
Clench is fantastic.
And Clench, the reprint. I know, it's sad. So, the original Clench it just stops you from playing story cards. So Carolyn would be like, okay, I know he has that repentant hand, and she would play Clench on me. And Clench would prevent me from playing Repent to repent of being clenched.
Yep.
So, this is a 12 defense, which is really strong. The reprint, on the other hand, is a 10. This is fair. It's a very fair thing to make him a 10 because he does have an ability, not an action, an ability that prevents them from playing story cards.
And it's for the life of it being out there instead of just a one-time thing.
Right. And so we even use a Clench, and we prefer to use this Clench just because he's bigger. Yes, it's not really that much fair.
Right.
But what I would do is when I had my Repent, she would have Clench out there. I could not use Repent. But if I had Gorilla Escape or had a way to get Gorilla Escape, I would go grab Gorilla Escape and put in a small group, and I would quote the Bible verse to defeat Clench. And I ended up getting that probably 56% of the time, considering the other ones I rarely ever got.
Yeah.
And that was just because this is Hebrews 12:1, and it's only like half of the verse. Let us throw off everything that hinders the sin so easily.
And the sin.
And the sin that so easily entangles. See, I still can't even get it. I'm reading the card right now.
Personally, I like the old Clench due to the fact that it's bigger. but I really, really, really like the new artwork better. So it's kind of a catch-22. It's like, do I want to run the pretty one or do I want to run the big one?
All right, now we're getting to my main strategy of my deck. So this is the level 1 Ninjiano. Ninjiano has been renamed in set 2 to Armorino, but due to the fact that these are different names, this chain does not really work very well.
Right.
So this is a 3 for 1 faith. It's a level 1, which is just fair, as we mentioned. And Ninjiano defeats the Fear Crow. Fear Crow has to do with fear, and the Bible verse that defeats Fear Crow is his virtue, bravery. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Psalms 27:1. The only 2 or 3 times that I've actually tried to quote that Bible verse against Fear Crow, I haven't been able to quote it because I know this Bible verse by the other translation. But I have gotten it once, and Carolyn did applaud me for it.
Whereas that's the one I know it from because we had a song about that at one of my churches. So.
Okay. Ninjiano grows into Wariano. Wariano is a 7 for 2. Out of all the 7 for 3s that we've seen in the 8 for 3s, Wariano 7 for 2 is very refreshing. Especially considering like in set 2, you have Fuzzworm. When he grows, he's a 7 for 3. So he's actually pretty good even still. Just value-wise, the 7-2 is strong. Wariano defeats Fear Crow Mega.
Which I love running, by the way.
Yes.
And it looks awesome, and it's big.
Yes. And Wariano, Bible verse is based on courage. It says, be on your guard, stand firm in the faith, be courageous, be strong. 1 Corinthians 16:13.
And I don't think you ever once got that one right.
True. But when we went to Kentucky, we played with my nephew Brandon.
Yes.
And Carolyn had Fear Crow Mega out there, and Brandon was playing with my deck, and I had him practice for 2 turns this Bible verse and had him like do motions and everything of, be on your guard, stand firm in the faith, and just be courageous, be strong. He got every single word but one right. And
we went ahead and gave it to him, though.
Gave it to him. Wariano grows into Armorino, our flagship character of the game. For 10 virtue points, he is a level 3 that only cost 1 to activate him.
You ran 3 sets of this guy's chain.
Yes, I did. I spent most of the game discarding him and then using Empty Tomb to play them all at once.
Yep.
And it was so good. That was my set 1 strategy. I do highly recommend that if you do use set 1 card, that this would be a chain that you would consider doing, because you start off with basic value, and then this is good value, and then this is amazing value. I never ran the double-edged sword because it was like trying to have like a 4th card onto this growth chain. And so it just wasn't worth it. But if you did, it was worth 13, and you can, if you can get 3 of these guys out with those, you can get 55 points in a single turn with a set 2 Armorino Ultra. Now, Armorino also defeats this Cine, Ratla. Is that right? Anyways, Ratla is deception, and so Armorino is the defender. Therefore, put on the whole armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And one of the translations says to stand against the wiles of the devil. And so this deception is one of the wiles of the devil, and Armorino is able to stand against it. So if you can quote that Bible verse, you defeat Ratla. But this Cine, we didn't really see very much play. Like, I used Fear Crow, and she used Fear Crow Mega, but this was an 8, and, when you have access to Cines that don't have effects, but that are 9 or 10s, like, we prefer to use those over this guy.
Or things like Omo.
Yeah.
That do have an effect for 8 or 9. Exactly. Usually, I don't think either one of us ever ran him.
Right. Now, fun fact is, this guy can be defeated by the level 1, level 2, and level 3 Armorino in set 2.
That is true.
And to wrap up the card review for the set 1 Faith, we have Armorino Ultra and his reprint. So, Armorino Ultra is 10 virtue points for level 1 for 3 universal. Or if you pay 3 faith, he gets +5. So he becomes a 15 for 3 faith. And since in set 1 I ran a mono-colored, or the only color or the only type of Animo I ran was faith, I would make him a 15 every single time. The creators obviously thought this was way too strong, so we used Armorino. So they reprinted Armorino in the starter deck to be Armorino Ultra, and just made him a 12 for 3, which this kind of became a standard. Which this is just as powerful as Stagnetic Ultra in set 2.
Yep. The one thing that Nathaniel liked to do in his whole thing was he would have the growth chain out here of this Armorino. He also would run 2 of these Ultras, and on one of them he would throw out David's sling up under here, and he would be able to send out 2 of these and 1 of these all at the same time, which was extremely rude for Series 1.
Yes. Like, could you imagine if I had gotten 1 of each of the David slings on Armorino?
You did do that a few times.
Yes. So I was able to score like a ton of points in a single turn, and that actually began us really looking at power plays in this game, because that was real powerful. Sometime I would do a prayer group, like I had trouble getting my power cards all game, and so Carolyn had like a ton of virtue points, and I'd be like, all right, well, I built up for this one moment of truth. And I would like score like
30 something, yeah, 40 something,
40 something points in a single turn with prayer group and my Armorino Ultras, and it was just really strong.
It was rude.
Yep. Now, if you want to, you can use the Armorino Ultra from the starter deck. That's been from the reprinted. I do recommend that if you can get your hands on this one, use this one until like the creators change the rules or they update it, so that way you don't use set 1 cards, which is a possibility in the future, because set 1 was really kind of like this beta testing ground to just really get a feel of how to make this card game really function. I would recommend that if they are going to do it, I'd say that we do need a card like Lumini, just not as strong or as fluid as Lumini.
Right.
So anyways, that is our set 1 review for the Faith cards. Do you have anything to add?
No. Just, I enjoy the game and never really ran Faith, so don't have a lot of comments on Faith.
All right then, cool. You guys have a blessed day.